to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, my absolute two favorites. There's no, as NWA once said, there's no Samsarison. These two guys, my two favorite guests, and they are here again. This is a show that is so good. It happens every Friday. Great Scott, your true crime Phil. That's a play on Great Scott, Scott Duffy, Special Agent Scott Duffy, who was a special agent in Wilmington, Delaware, in charge, the special agent in charge. And then you've got Phil Waters, retired homicide detective, the founder, CEO, and largest shareholder of Kindred Spirits Investigations, the premier investigations company in the United States of America. And not only that, but look how good Phil looks. It is 7:30 in the morning. Phil, how do you look so good? How long ago did you wake up?
About 30 minutes ago.
This might be the best time of day for you because I've never seen you look so good. Scott Duffy, being the consummate husband and father, he's taking his wife and son to a concert tonight, and he's leaving early. So we have till 3 o'clock. This will be, instead of a 9-hour episode, it'll only be a 6-hour episode. So everyone buckle in. And we're going to be talking about this manhunt entering day 7. My thumbnail says nationwide manhunt. It's because I thought by now maybe this guy has taken off. They say he hasn't. He's in Kentucky. We're going to get into the weeds, no pun intended on that, in a moment. It's been a crazy week for those following the Donna Adelson case, because she goes to trial next week. We've been doing 2 shows a day, and I'm loopy. So there you go. Look at this, Scott Duffy. Since you're Irish, I must come to you first on this because it's Becky Ireland. Hello, STS family. Today is Friday the 13th. I had no idea until I read this, which in numerology is a great day and a highly spiritual number. So enjoy your day and be happy. Becky Ireland, do you know Glynis McClan? Anyway, she's always a guest on Coast to Coast. She's a numerologist. Glynis McCann, I think it is. Scott Duffy, do you believe in this? Do you believe in numerology? Many people think, on Friday the 13th, bad things can happen. Becky Ireland going completely 180 degrees the other way, that it is a great day and a highly spiritual day. Where do you fall on the Friday the 13th dilemma, argument, etc.? Couldn't think of another word.
Yeah, I love numbers. I'm not so sure of numerology, but I do believe there are dates and numbers and so forth that have plenty of meaning across the spectrum. So, of course, Friday the 13th, being a big fan, I would say my whole family is a big fan of the Friday the 13th, as well as anything Halloween. That's always hits home. And then
is a 5-year-old too young to watch Friday the 13th?
Not in my house.
Okay, good. So maybe we'll watch it tonight. He's kind of tough. He might like it. Go ahead, Scott. Did not mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how. It was pretty early, and they pretty much gravitated towards the series. So, and then of course, in my world of my Christian faith and so forth, I visited a small town in Portugal called Fatima, Fatima, and so we believe that the Mother of God appeared to 3 small children on the verge of teenage years and whatnot on the 13th of every month from May to October. So it's always kind of had a special moment in my life.
It's is it Lady Fatima? I feel like it's Lady Fatima.
Yeah, it's called Our Lady of Fatima. So anywhere that we believe she appeared throughout the country, it's the town or the city that. So
by the way, my
my 13th.
uncle Yeah, my uncle now has moved to Portugal, which is kind of crazy. Lives on a
Beautiful.
farm there. From Elsa, because I can't say her name. Anybody have any idea? Is this Danish? I have no idea what this is. Terra Koigil. Elsa, let me know since I can't pronounce your name. Phil Waters, got to ask you, are you extra cautious on Friday the 13th, or if you see a black cat crossing your path, you get scared? How do you handle the fact that today is Friday the 13th, a day that Becky says, oh, Estonia, shout out to Estonia. My mom would slap me. I don't think I could point out Estonia on a world map, but I don't know. I'll have to look at a map later. Phil, are you extra cautious on Friday the 13th because it is a superstitious day?
No.
I thought that might be your answer. Not at all. Not a moment of trepidation that today is the 13th and something bad could happen.
No.
That's what I thought he was going to say. So since we have just a 7-hour show today, let's get right into it. By the way, I want to say something. I don't know if I can even say this publicly, but I'm going to. So on this, our guests are unbelievable. Our community, sorry, the guests are unbelievable too. But I had mentioned, because I'm going to this trial. By the way, I don't think you're going to see Fil and Scott for about 2 weeks because I'm going to be in Tallahassee covering this trial. However, I mentioned on the show that the favorite, Tallahassee's got a main street outside the courthouse. There's only a couple places to eat, and everyone goes to the Metro Deli. It's kind of a famous spot. And I was saying that every time I go in there, I want a Metro Deli shirt, and they're always out of shirts. Someone from STS Nation, I'm not going to say who, I know who it is, and thank you so much, took it of their own volition to call the Metro Deli in Tallahassee and get shirts ordered for us. I could not believe it. But then she took it a step further because they know I'm doing lunch lives. And now I might be able to do lunch lives from the Metro Deli. It is a dream come true. It's unbelievable that let's see Nugget for a second, Phil. We heard him shake, rattle, and roll. Pick him up there. So we might be doing lives from the Metro Deli, which would be absolutely incredible. Look at Nugget. We haven't seen him in a while. How's that breath, Phil? Not yours, his.
We've been giving her little treats for her little breath.
Look at this. Your daughter's in the chat already. Hi, Joel. Hi, Phil. My friend Norma is visiting your side of the island from Nebraska right now. Does that mean Miami? I'm not sure. And hi, Scott. What concert are you going to? Are you allowed to reveal this, Scott? I don't want to reveal any sensitive information.
Weezer.
There you go.
Weezer.
There you go. By the way, we are streaming right now on this channel, the Best Trials channel, and on Twitter, if you can believe that. How the CEO made that happen and Space Coast, I have no idea. Nikki Cuds weighing in here. I've got a lot of good luck on Friday the 13th. So, COE, still waiting for that photo. I know you're working on it. Look at this. 5-year-old COE. This is from her brother, Space Coast, was a scary movie addict. Would she watch Friday the 13th? Space Coast, weigh in. J Mac. You think he can handle Friday the 13th? And Ida, look at this. Ida Shaw. It's interesting around the world. It is a lucky day in the Muslim religion and my culture. Fulani in Guinea, West Africa. Wow. At the 13th hour, one is to stand on a chair and make a wish, which supposedly will manifest. At what time? At the 13th hour. When's the 13th hour of? Did it pass already?
Right, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. It passed. It's 1:40. Can we do it at 1:40? I could get on a chair right now. I'm not opposed to it at all. Nikki Cudd says, "Look at this. I have a black cat, and it's the best. And look at this, Estonia. It's south of Finland, north of Latvia, west from Russia. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Scott Duffy, in your international FBI travels, have you ever been to either of these, but especially Latvia? I'm curious about.
No.
Yeah, there you go. MJ says, I love Friday the 13th. I'll be at the casino later. Look at that. And look at this. Becky also chiming in. We should just take questions on Friday the 13th for the next hour and a half. Scott, I love Halloween. My family is from Ireland. We're of the Carey clan, Count Tipperary.
Tipperary.
Where is Black Widow when you need her? We need her now. Happy Friday 13th to all. That should put an extra twist on today's funky episode. So, Scott Duffy, there's a man named Joseph Couch. He's a former Army reservist. And right now, there is not just a manhunt, but a grueling manhunt underway for this guy. And it has entered day 7. He's the man who, if you remember, last Saturday night just opened fire. This is him. It's 2024. Scott Duffy, why are we seeing a black and white photo of this guy that's grainy? Can you answer that first? Shouldn't the FBI or whoever is leading this investigation, which I don't know that it is the FBI, shouldn't they have gotten a better photo for the public?
I have seen a color photo, but I like that. It's a little retro.
Scott Duffy not interested in apprehending, but just having a cool retro photo. It is kind of cool, like a old 1800s looking for Bonnie and Clyde kind of look. But Scott Duffy, on a serious note, this guy opened fire, and I'll get into the details of that, on a very busy I-75, and I think he hit 12 cars and 5 people. Imagine for a moment just driving your local main road or highway, and you're just listening to Diana Ross on the radio, and suddenly you get a stinging feeling in your leg, or Don Henley if you're Phil Waters. Imagine you're in a red Ferrari on I-75 listening to Don Henley, and suddenly something pierces your red Ferrari door and is now in your leg. I mean, Scott Duffy, this is truly frightening. Reminiscent, I told you of the DC snipers, and then, of course, you told me you worked that case. Did it when you first heard this, did it remind you of that as well?
Oh, yeah. And with regards to the DC sniper, that was early enough in my career where, we're just a couple of states away. And then pretty much as this was early, too, in the FBI's development of their national tip lines and whatnot, that anything and everything that came out. And I would be surprised that not one state probably didn't have some sort of lead, either to interview somebody, has a relative of somebody that was affected, or even just, hey, I think I saw the car, because there were tips about early in the information, hey, this kind of car was being looked at, or be on the lookout for, as opposed to this, and there were bad pieces of information that were going out as well, which is typical in such a national and chaotic incident. But this brings me back a bit, and then, of course, we have shots fired into, just like anything else, it's a mass attack. Instead of going into an enclosed area, jumps onto a hill, a cliff off of exit 49, and then just indiscriminately starts firing at passerbys, right? And then, of course, that is chaotic in itself. And now, as you said, entering day 7, looking for Joe Couch to get this guy into custody if he's not already deceased.
By the way, Phil Waters, the minute I sent him this article, being the highly decisive and opinionated man that he is, texted me right back, said this guy's lying in the brush there with a self-inflicted wound. Do you still feel that way, Phil Waters, on entering day 7 here?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, Phil Waters. Let me ask you, what about, I mean, you as a former look at this. What we know, the COE going the extra mile. Federal, state, and local officers, this is the color photo, by the way, are doing grid searches in the Daniel Boone National Forest by exit 49 off I-75 near the scene of Saturday's shooting, where officials recovered a silver vehicle registered to Couch. It was some sort of SUV, a Toyota, I believe. The Daniel Boone National Forest is massive, spanning 21 counties in eastern Kentucky. It's about the size of Puerto Rico, which has a land area of about 3,400 square miles. And this is a little bit of what it looks like here. This is some B-roll. Imagine, as we watch this, and I'll replay it, Phil Waters, your expertise is homicide, right? But when you would go, I would say more often than not, you get some clues. Like you would know it's someone related to a family, whatever the case might be. Here, what about just the extreme randomness of this, that you're driving your Ferrari down I-75 and now you're being fired at? How does it complicate it when it's just incredibly random? Again, it did remind me of, hopefully it's over, but it did remind me of the DC sniper. And those guys, by the way, started in Tucson, Arizona, where I met the COE at KGUN 9 News. And they got all the way to Washington, D.C., I think, before they were apprehended. So what about this randomness, Phil Waters?
Talking about this guy?
Yes, sir.
Well,
And if you, I mean, is there any...
My first inquiry here is Scott, what's the concert you're going to? Who's
said? It's Weezer.
But it's
Weezer.
not. I am...
Okay. just curious. Okay. Of course, I got all their albums, right?
Phil, are you a big Weezer fan, Phil? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah. This is, by the way, another... This is more video. This is another video clip of the... Look at this area. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, I have been involved in manhunts and in areas very similar to this. So this is one of these deals where, you gear up and you're the way we've done it, and I'm sure it's being done much the same way. You grid off the area and you send teams into certain areas so that they don't make as little contact as possible. And then you may do some overlapping stuff to cover areas that have already been covered to make sure you didn't miss anything. So it's very methodical in something like this, especially in an area like this. My sense is that I read that, I don't remember if it was a sister or some relative or friend that had said that he had suggested that if something like this, if he was involved in something like this, he would go into the woods and just do it himself.
Yeah.
So,
but he did say before he did that, he was going to, quote unquote, kill a lot of people. We'll get to that.
Oh yeah, right. That would be the whole purpose of him doing it himself. So it would look like that he went and intended to kill a bunch of people. Not a very good shot. I mean, he hit some cars, I guess, but in terms of people, fortunately, did not kill anyone. At least I haven't seen.
Nope, they're all expected to survive. 4 are out of the hospital. 1 remains in the hospital.
There was one that was shot in the face. That may be the one that's still in the hospital. But and they found this car that comes to him. So why would he not, when he's through doing his deal, go to his car and take off? So those types of pieces of evidence take me in the direction that he did what he did. He thought he accomplished what he set out to do, didn't stick around to verify it, and faded off into that very heavily wooded area and popped himself and did what he said he was going to do. So, and that makes it even more difficult and to find him, because obviously he knows where he is. And if that's in fact what he did, then you have the natural effect of decomposition and the forest wildlife getting in there, and now he's a source of food. So, you know, I don't know what the weather is there. That will all have a part in this. If it's hot, that's going to happen quicker. And you know what you're hoping for here is you come across where you get the odor of decomposition and try to narrow it down to wherever he might be. And this is all just my thinking about what the possibilities are here. So, but right now, my sense is that he has dispatched himself.
There you go. Jennifer Love Hewitt. I'm not going to bring up her comment. I just did a moment ago because I want to get to this one from Brett. But she says, Scott Duffy, as a Kentucky girl, he could be from London, Kentucky to West Virginia and never hit a main road. Do they think he's still local? Followed by Tennis Girl 101. Wasn't sweetheart she is. Wasn't Eric Rudolph on the lam for 5 years or more? Before we get back on a serious note, Phil, Don Hagerman wants to know if your Ferrari could possibly outrun a bullet if you saw the bullet coming your way.
I've never known any vehicle or any person who could, in my case, could outrun 923 feet per second.
I didn't know it was 923 feet per second. That's amazing. Always dropping knowledge
that's
on
a 45 round. That's a somehow.
Incredible. Okay, so look at this from Brett Fishley or Fishley. Never know. But Brett, nice to meet you. I don't think you've heard. Look at this. Vietnam. Our biggest story, Donna Adelson, she tried to escape to Vietnam with a one-way ticket via Dubai. They arrested her at the Miami International Airport. Scott seems to pop up. I'll tell you what, Phil Waters will too. On Netflix docs I watch. Question for the panel. How premeditated was this, Scott Duffy? Does he have a bag of food, a map, an old cabin he knows about? They don't know, as far as I know, but what does this do to the investigation? Listen, this guy he went out that morning and bought this weapon, which is an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle. If you ask me, I think by the way, they found a bag, they found a backpack. So maybe he doesn't have it anymore, but what's your gut tell you, Scott Duffy? Is he prepared to be in there in that heavily wooded area?
Yeah, I would like to know when this conversation happened with his sister, and then I imagine there's some other people out there that have similar knowledge of conversations he had. So, you know, I heard a percentage. I'm sure that number has gone higher. That about 93%. Let's just call this. It is a mass shooting, mass attack, and that shooters have foretold in some way, whether it be veiled or direct, and then obviously through social media, whatever platforms, and ultimately it just falls on deaf ears because we probably hear that and not sure how to take that, and so it'd be interesting to see at what part of his life, like what his mental health has been, being in the National Guard, what has he shared with those who he served with, and then of course I can tell you they're going through his digital media and any other devices he might have had and kind of get an idea of his planning. How far is this going back? Because totally agree. The very possibility, if he said that to his sister, then he executed the first part. Why not execute the second part of that? But law enforcement is absolutely treating this as if he's alive. And with that, it's very painstakingly slow because, as you could see from those pictures, wow, the thicket and then they're limited daylight. So they're not doing these searches at night, especially because of the dangers of the terrain. And just take you back a year ago this month with Cavalcante. It was very much a difficult terrain in the sense of, heavy wooded area, which is bad enough, but not the hills and the cliffs that you see there in some of the pictures in Kentucky. And I don't know, you know, um, cabins, hunting cabins, etc., of to where he could be in hiding out, whatever have you. Did he have a secondary mode of travel? And I don't even know what that could be through there other than on foot. So yeah, there's a lot to be said here. And of course the guns. I mean, so he recently went to go purchase that gun. I imagine the plan started before that. I imagine that that gun was purchased for the intent of doing what he did a week ago. And then what other guns does he have in his possession? I imagine there are um, pistols, sidearms, semi-automatic handguns that are in his possession. Perhaps they'll be able to determine, hey, we definitely have one missing or more. And because if whether he's armed and on the move, or they know that another weapon is missing and he's armed and use that secondary weapon to take his own life. And like Phil said, let's just say you're using all the technology that's out there, infrared and whatnot, to pick up heat. And commit he did commit suicide. So you're no longer getting that heat signature. So all these things play into it. And
Never
it's
thought of that.
it's you know doing these grid searches are good to identify areas and then continue to move out. But then they also, if he is on the move, have to post up some sort of security, so that way they can, it's like going through after a hurricane or whatnot. Okay, we went through this town, we determined that we've recovered everybody that we need to recover, and you move to the next section. Here it's very different. And I wouldn't be surprised, no matter how observant you are and you're moving across at a very slow pace, that you could miss him. You could miss him if he's lying in wait, or you could miss him if he's lying deceased. And then what do you do to go backwards? It's just an amazingly difficult search.
So Scott mentioned the technology. They're using helicopters, drones, and infrared to try to spot him. Also, of course, best possible instrumentation, which is a dog. They're using dogs too, and of course, special response teams. Phil Waters, you said you've been on manhunts. The thing that's, by the way, Cavalcante, who Scott was talking about, is Danilo Cavalcante, who crab walked up in a Pennsylvania jail and was able to flee, and he was on the run for a bunch of days, as Scott said, in a forested area of Pennsylvania. But Phil, you've been on a manhunt. What's so frightening about this, as Scott was saying too, they're steep inclines. They believe when he was firing on I-75, he was on an incline. If he's alive and you're doing a grid search, you're basically a duck, and he's duck hunting. Could be. What kind of equipment are they wearing? Like, are they wearing helmets? I mean, you could just get picked off here. It seems very scary to me. What do you do to protect yourself on this search, Phil?
Well, in terms of equipment, I'm sure, as we did, we wore body armor, and you have to be. It's more of a being aware of your surroundings. And I mean, the problem is he knows where he is, and nobody else does. So he does have an advantage, and I would imagine that he picked this area because he's familiar with it. And if he has gotten to a point where he's at an elevated position where he can shoot down into whatever target he finds, certainly he would have the advantage. And I'm sure, I know that they are using the air support in conjunction with the ground folks and people on the ground. And so everything's being done, at least from a tactical aspect, to keep the safety of the searchers in mind, and also for him. This is what I think most people don't know about or don't presume, is that when law enforcement is on a search, or they are in a pursuit for that matter, they have to consider the safety of not only themselves and other people, but also of the person they're pursuing and searching for. So this is not a, we're trying to find this guy so we can terminate him. So everything they're doing is for the safety of everyone, including the person they're searching for. So they have to consider all those things. And if they're, as you've already mentioned, I'm sure they're using FLIRs from the ground and from the air. And again, if this guy has already offed himself, then that signature is not going to appear. So
and Phil, like, how many, when you're doing a grid search, like how many law enforcement like personnel do you think they have doing this? I mean, we're talking like 100. I mean, it seems like you'd have to have a lot of people who are gridding the area. I mean, it's like it's literally a needle in a haystack. So how many resources do they have to bring in?
Quite a few. I mean, it would depend on how large the grid areas are going to be, and how many people they're going to put in those areas to facilitate a search. So a lot of people, I think, when the one you mentioned, the guy that the little, Spider-Man dude.
Yeah, Danilo.
Incredible amount of people, and they bring in all sorts of support, FBI. This becomes a all hands on deck kind of a process. So I'm sure that's what's happening here. State police, local police, there might be some federal authorities involved. So all those resources are brought in to get this person, either get him into custody or recover his body.
Good point there, Phil Waters. You mentioned those 3 letters that I know you adore, FBI. Scott Duffy, what in this type of situation, you got local, state, and federal. So what is the FBI's skill set here? What are they best at? How do they help out?
Yeah, so like anything else, it's another law enforcement agency. Whether it be the FBI, ATF, or any one of the lettered agencies, they bring, just like the local law enforcement, their numbers. Right now, law enforcement needs numbers, and you're talking about very taxing, not only on the day-to-day shifts of what they're doing, but then they need to cycle those guys out, so that way people are sharp and so forth. This is extremely taxing, not only physically but mentally. So in that regard, the federal government can bring in tremendous amount of bodies and cycle them out no matter where in the country, and on their own dime. So it's not adding to the agency that's the lead there. And I believe the sheriff's office, from what I saw in a press conference, that they turned the fugitive investigation over to the Kentucky State Police. So with regards to that, they're arriving and they're assisting. I heard 60, 70 that were actually involved in the day-to-day searches, 150 with regards to everybody else in support. I'm sure that number has grown. But at the same time, ultimately, what's the goal? To find him, dead or alive, in order to be able to say the community is no longer threatened by this individual. So that's it's like anything else. Law enforcement, they have their basics. Uh, Training is very similar, federal, state, or local. So even though they have specialty units, for example, I believe in the Calvacante, it was one of the border patrols. So you had an elite unit from the border patrol that was able to lay eyes and ultimately arrest him. So you have across the board many of those type of elite units assisting from federal agencies, but also just your day-to-day agents that have weapons, that know what they're doing, and and adding to the body count of that search.
Yeah, I remember that photo when they got Cavalcante. It was a dog jumped him, but it was at a special unit from the Border Patrol. IGG rocks here. Phil, this is right up your alley. The psychology of human beings. Why does a guy like this? Why does he feel the need to harm others? He is an Army reservist. Apparently, he never deployed, but he did suffer PTSD. Do you think it was related to the service, Phil, his PTSD if he never deployed? And why it is a great point. Why hurt others instead of just hurting yourself if that is the ultimate goal?
Well, I mean, the answer, I mean, there's evil in the world and it manifests itself in people like this. In terms of the PTSD factor, being in the military and that kind of thing, and sometimes that's attributed to law enforcement and so forth and so on. I would just say my experience has been, my observation has been, and I served with guys in the Marines that were just back from Vietnam and suffered PTSD as a result of those experiences there. And then I've had some friends that later went on and served in Iran and Iraq, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and my son was in Iraq and Afghanistan in the Marine Corps. And, I don't just tell you that those folks and people like him, my observation has been that they had mental health issues or they had problems in some way before they joined the military, before they got involved in law enforcement. And then the things that they experience once they join those particular groups just seems to increase over time for whatever reason. So when you take somebody who has got a problem in the first place and you put them into the psychological tests are given, and I know at HPD, you're not only given the MMPI, the Minnesota, the test that 800 questions that, would you rather be a tree or a fire truck, that kind of stuff. And then you're interviewed by a psychologist, a staff psychologist, and everything is done to determine that you are capable and suitable for that type of work. Sometimes people get through the system. And I mean, that's just life. And they have some problems that are not revealed in a background investigation and only revealed when they come across the interaction. Because look, the only reason you have a military is to kill the enemy and take real estate. And that's a very intense process. Even if you're never involved in it, that's what you're trained to do. And in law enforcement, you're trained to deal with all manner of people, violent people. You are taught to maintain your tactics and your street survival senses so that you can go home to your family the next day, at the end of your shift. So the intensity of the training itself can, in some people, flip a switch and they have for lack of a better term, they have a breakdown. But those things, again, it's my observation that those folks that have those kinds of things, those moments. There was something there prior to their getting involved in that particular activity regarding the military or law enforcement or even first responders. I mean, firemen, the guys that paramedics. When people are put in situations where they are seeing day in and day out the results of men committing atrocious acts on other people, committing these other atrocious acts on other people, it can have an effect. It can have an effect. I know guys that I worked with in homicide. Look, it had an effect on some of them to the degree that they left homicide. It was just they made a decision that this wasn't for them. So, it's. I think it takes a special person to join the military and a special person to become law enforcement or ride on an ambulance or run into a burning building. And that's a different type of individual. And we're all in the sense that we're all held to a higher standard. So it's disturbing to me that we lower the standards for agendas and we get people in there that have no business being there. And therefore, somebody like this, I'd be curious to know this guy's background and if there were any things that he may have indicated prior to his joining the Army Reserves that might give somebody a heads up. But all that stuff is usually in retrospect, right? I mean, nothing was known at the time, and I don't know if this answers the question, but I just it's just been my sense that having friends that have committed suicide in law enforcement and military, that because of the things that they had seen or experienced, it's just this type of evil manifests itself in different ways, and so
well put, Phil. And Jimmy McNutty here. I think Joel answered the question. If this guy didn't deploy to any danger, he's got guilty feelings of being a coward. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. Didn't put himself in harm's way, so maybe he's forcing himself into harm's way. By the way, just seeing this, the cousin, Joseph Couch's cousin, a woman named Adriana Couch, she said she first learned of the shootings on Saturday when she got flooded with messages from friends and family. And her quote is, "Honestly, my heart sank. It was embarrassing." Adriana says her heart immediately broke for the victims, the families, and anyone else affected. She said, "We had multiple police come to grandma's house, mom's house. They've been everywhere looking for this man." And then Scott Duffy, of course, I don't know why this happens, but she's now receiving death threats from strangers online. I mean, it's a very violent country. I keep saying that. She had nothing to do with this. But Scott, since you're soothing Scott, and there's a meme to prove it, where you're sitting crisscross applesauce, as my kids would say. La Mesa here saying to Ned Smith, another valued member of STS Nation, she says, "I feel you, Ned. The last few times I went to the movie theater, I had a weird feeling and was looking at people beforehand. I'm 45. This is a new feeling." Scott Duffy, when I saw Star Wars in 1977 at the Menlo Park Mall in Edison, New Jersey, and I can remember the smell of the popcorn wafting in that day, I don't think there was a bone in my body that felt that there was going to be a mass shooter. But I do think of that all the time now, when I'm especially talking to you guys. I'm always positioned, not that I can do anything, but at least I'll be in a good position if I ever get taken out. But I'm always looking. I'm always concerned for my kids. What has happened to this country, Scott Duffy?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a lot packed in there, Joel.
Yeah, I need that in under 3 words or 3 words or less. No, go ahead.
Praise the Lord. It's just
Uh-oh.
that was for Phil.
You're getting in dangerous territory there, Scott.
Panties in a wad. Go ahead, Scott Duffy.
Yeah, so I I've always thought that everybody should take some sort of situational awareness training. Like Phil, like myself, like anybody in law enforcement, you really get a lot of good training with regards to situational awareness, just being aware of your surroundings and then having a very simple plan in your head and playing that plan.
Did Scott just freeze up? That's usually
I
reserved
think he did. Yeah,
Phil.
he's doing my thing.
Yeah, Phil, look at that. There must be storms. So Phil, I'll throw it to you. I mean, it does seem. You're back, Scott. You frozen. You looked like Phil for a minute, frozen. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, it'd be great if he actually wasn't frozen, but just did that just to be funny. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so the training is good, and so it's, as we've spoken over the last year and a half, we've been together about where you sit when you go to a restaurant or a public place. We like to watch the door. We like to watch our exits. So what's been happening at least the last 7, 8, and I'm sure more years, but intensifying with regards to active shooter trainings in schools and churches and other community events. And people are now, that's on the brain as opposed to a fire drill or something like that. And so elementary school kids are now training regularly for an active shooter, not for an electrical fire, a forest fire, something else that might just happen and we have to react, but to where somebody is going to do harm to you and be prepared for it. So that's a lot, I think, just that weighs on everybody's shoulders, and what is good, what we need to do, but what is happening with these children that we're raising. And it's one thing to react and to act in a way that preserves your life. Are we following up with that to provide the necessary tools for us to regroup? Not only if, for example, a couple of weeks ago, you had 1900 children that were affected in a school shooting within, a new school year. And so those children who have, from what I gather, that school had recently gone through an active shooter training, but now that they've been through the unthinkable, what is it that they're able to build upon, mentally? And so this is a very tough time, and it'd be interesting to see, as Columbine really was somewhat the birth of this, why are they increasing in such a tremendous amount as opposed to decreasing?
Look at this. I remember training in elementary school, duck and cover in case a nuke hit. We never had to do that. It was a little before my time. Kids have it much worse today. It is very, for lack of a better term, just depressing. Scott mentioned school kids, and here school kids are being affected because they have actually closed schools, which are still closed in the vicinity of where these shots were fired, and businesses are they're allowed to be open, but I was reading that many of the businesses have actually resorted, if they have a drive-through window, to only doing drive-through service. I don't get what the complete logic is there, because I guess if he was out, maybe he'd have a car he could pull right up. Who knows? But they're taking extreme caution there. Phil Waters, who might as well have a psychology degree after having been a homicide detective for so many years. If this guy did not unalive himself, and he's still out there, do you think he's intent on killing again? Is it possible tomorrow night you're watching college football and you get an alert? There's been another mass shooting off another highway somewhere along this route. Is that possible? You're going to say, of course it's possible, Joel. But what do you what do you say?
Well, you just answered your own question.
But I mean, which way are you? Do you feel in your heart of hearts like it was a one and done, or is this guy so angry and bitter and worked up and broken that he's going to reemerge and do this again?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't know. I think he accomplished what he set out to do, and he knows what the result is going to be, that there's going to be a massive search for him. I would think that he is more in the mode of, if he is still on the planet, I would say that his mode now is to hide, is to conceal. I don't know that he would want to draw any more attention to himself, but I mean, it's certainly possible he could go to some other location and start it up all over again. But that would just bring authorities directly to him. I mean, they're there. And he's, unless he had another vehicle somewhere that he got into, then the presumption is they've recovered his vehicle. He's on foot. So, you know, you gotta consider all the logistics here of his movement and what he's carrying with him. And does that mean that did he plan far enough ahead that he was going to go to different locations, multiple locations? Did he bring food with him? Did he bring water with him? Did he, you know, so I just keep the KISS principle with these things, try to be objective. It just looks to me like he went and he did his deal. He'd already indicated a sister or cousin or relative of some kind that if he was going to do something like this, he was going to take care of it, take care of himself. And that's my sense of what he's done. So I think that if he were to set up another set of targets, I think that would have already occurred. I think he would have gotten to where he wanted to get to and would have already started that. Now, I may be completely wrong, but from what we're seeing now, I mean, the evidence now leads me to the other scenario that he did what he set out to do, and he's gone into the woods and found a place. And
I mean, Scott, with the DC sniper, I want to get to this comment, but with I'll throw the question out. I'll read the comment. We'll get the answer. But the DC sniper, I think they went quiet for days, if not weeks, if not possibly months at a time. But look at this comment, North Star. Thank you for sharing this. STS Nation is unreal. The people we get coming in, it's amazing. I was convicted for being involved in a mass shooting when I was 16, sentenced as an adult, and served 17 years. Being on the other side of the situation as a teen perpetrator, I'm still ashamed. North Star looks like a woman, which would be rare for this. North Star, just in the comments, you don't know, if you feel comfortable, tell us what I don't know what bad word to use, what triggered you to do this. And thank you for sharing. And I think both Phil and Scott would say that God is forgiving, and it seems like you have remorse here. So kudos to you for having the courage to come out and let us know about this. Scott Duffy, they would go quiet for a long time, the DC snipers, right? The so-called DC snipers. So do you agree with Bill that he would have acted again, or is it possible that he's just kind of like regaining, his footing, and he'll strike again? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the similarities between the DC sniper and this Kentucky shooting are similar in the sense that they were by or on a highway, but I think there's a definite difference. So your mass shooters, even though it's very hard to pattern them because they're across the board between ages, disgruntlements, mental health or not mental health. So it seems like mass shooters, school, businesses, whatever have you, um, are across the board different in the sense of genders. It seems like every aspect of a background, culturally, gender, have been involved in a mass shooting in the sense that it's not just like an FBI profile. We'll talk about a serial killer being a certain type of person, whatnot, background, etc. So in that regard, I do think there's a definite difference, and it seemed like you had a pair that set out um, to cause harm and then got to watch their work, um, as opposed to what you see here and typical of a mass shooting, where it's a one and done, and then it's over, and it's over because either they're in custody immediately or have committed suicide and ending, or have been shot by law enforcement as a result of law enforcement quickly addressing that threat. So it remains to be seen. It seems like, at least from what we gather, what's the evidence we have, a sister providing information, which is a snapshot into this individual's mind, and so it seems like that's what he set out to do. It seems like he had an after plan, and that was to kill himself. So that's it's the big unknown is his body has not been found.
Yeah.
He has not been found.
Yeah.
So
By the way, the interesting thing about that is he just fired 12 rounds, or I don't know how many rounds, but he hit 12 cars. So Scott, he wouldn't even know the extent of the injuries. Like he doesn't know if there are a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe he thinks he, killed a lot of people and didn't, and that was good enough, and he just unalived himself, right? Like he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well,
By the way, real quick, Phil,
hey,
from North, hang on one second. For North Star, I'm open to sharing. This is fascinating. North Star, I can't bring you on today because we have no way to call in, but do me a favor. This unfortunately happens all too often. We're talking about school shootings. Please email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. And I'd love to get on a call and bring you in as a best guest when this is unfortunately almost impossible to avoid, that and it will, sadly, as Phil would say, it's not a matter of if but when. So surviving the survivor at Gmail. I personally would be very yeah, I get you, too big a topic to just text. I agree, but email me and we'll handle it. Phil Waters, never mean to put you off from a comment that you have. Go ahead. By the way, people said that Scott is getting a lot of talking time today, so you should feel proud, Phil.
Really, we're going to go back to that? Oh my gosh, man! People freaking get over it. Good God. And I don't remember what I was going to say, so go on.
Oh, there you go. Well, Phil, I have a question for you then, because I'm always prepared. People think that I'm a buffoon, but I prepare like this is my job. I come in well prepared. So one of the things, the Kentucky State Police Master Trooper Scotty Pennington, he said this week in a very Phil-esque sort of way, he said, it's our job to try to find him, dead or alive. I feel like that's something Phil would say. But then he went on to say that they are asking the public for help. Now, this guy's very dangerous, basically saying if there's sightings, I don't think they're saying to go there and try to catch this guy. But from your perspective, is it a bad, look at this, Cabo Verde Islands? I have no idea where they are. Please let us know. Is that, I know Cabo's in Mexico. This sounds like a very different type of Cabo. Phil Waters, what about the fact that law enforcement is asking the public for help? Is that concerning? And by the way, if you're from an exotic location like Rahway, New Jersey, or the Cabo Verde Islands, or Philadelphia, please let me know where you are. And if it's Verde is green, Ned Smith, I do know that. I'm not a complete idiot, Ned Smith. But yeah, if you're in an interesting locale, let me know, and I will read it off at the end of the show. Phil Waters, is it bad that for the public that law enforcement is asking them to help? Is that a sign of desperation?
No.
How come?
That's always asked for. I mean, the community provides those eyes that law enforcement doesn't have available to them. So any information that they garner from people who see things, it's the old, see something, say something. So that's standard. That's SOP for these types of operations. And what I was going to say was, you mentioned, Joel, that 12. We know he fired 12 rounds. We don't know that. We know he had 12 hits.
Correct.
He may have fired 50 rounds for all we know, and he hit 12 cars. So
Phil, how important is it for investigators to try to collect as many of those rounds as they can to get an idea? Were they looking everywhere for other rounds?
Well, given the fact that it's on a highway, I doubt unless there's some structures on the other side, it'd be very, very difficult to find other hits on other structures or trees or whatever. So what they would be looking for would be on the other side to see if they find any kind of casings. Now, he may have been astute enough that he picked them all up and took them with him. So, and this guy, and I'm curious I don't know that I've read why he left the reserves. So unless you got
he was honorably discharged from the military. Okay. I do know that.
If that's the case, I would be curious to know what kind of a soldier he was in terms of performance and his ability to do that job or whatever it was. I mean, I don't know what his MOS was, but so I would be curious to know what his background there was in the reserves and why he left. I mean, people leave for all sorts of reasons, but I'd be curious to know why he decided to leave. But and that would be just part of what I would be doing would be a psychological autopsy on this guy and trying to kind of get into his head and figure out where he is and where he was.
By the way, it's kind of a bittersweet day, not because it's Friday the 13th, but because Scott's taking his kid and wife to a Weezer concert. So we've only got about 28 minutes. Yours truly has a haircut right after this. And Phil Waters is probably going to make his morning coffee, morning Joe, as they say. Look at this from your adopted daughter here, Abby. Phil, Dad, are you feeling grumpy today? If so, I will lift you up and love you. Followed by
Abby. I very much, no, I'm not feeling grumpy, but I very much appreciate that. I do.
If I can remind people, it's very early for Phil.
Yeah, it is. It is very early, and I appreciate him being there.
Well, I'm up by 7 o'clock, so that's really not a factor. But I tell you what, I have not done yet. I usually start my day with my prayer time and Bible study, and I have not done that yet. So that may be the factor here of coming off a little more on edge.
When you just said that morning Bible study, there's an interesting story, which I'll share in 9 seconds with you. But when I was a young producer, there was a show. If you remember, A&E Biography was a huge hit back in like the late 90s. Everyone was watching. It was like one of the first, I guess, not a reality show, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, long story short, NBC, of course, is what they do in TV, tried to mimic it with a show from the now disgraced Matt Lauer, who was hosting it. It was called In Profile. I don't think anyone ever actually saw it, but I was working on that show, and I got to spend about 2 weeks with Muhammad Ali. Have you heard of Muhammad Ali, Phil Waters?
Let's see.
He's a boxer.
They made a movie about him,
Yes, with Will Smith, but he is a boxer. And I got to spend literally about 2 weeks of my life with him. It was unbelievable. Arguably the most famous man maybe ever to live, except maybe for Jesus, I would say. I don't know, but he's up there. And Phil Waters, he knew that I was Jewish, yet in the mornings he would ask me if I wanted to study the Quran with him. And he would sit at his desk in the hotel, and he would tell me things. He was a giant teddy bear. He had Phil Water like a big bear paws for hands. And I was just the reason I remember and bring this up is we were at a pizza place. Shout out to Anthony's Pizza here in North Miami, and my son was with us, and Grandma Carm, and he had no idea who Muhammad Ali was. So there you go. That is my Muhammad Ali story, and I've got the pictures to prove it. Maybe I'll put those on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. Scott Duffy. Have you ever met Muhammad Ali, Scott Duffy, or is it just
No,
me?
I have. No, I was listening. That sounds pretty cool.
You know what's sad? I actually, when I was at Fox News, I covered his funeral. So it was kind of like a full circle moment. I went to Lexington, Kentucky. Yes, Cassius Clay. He signed something, Cassius Clay, that I have, which is kind of crazy. So Scott Duffy, there was this dire text warning that we spoke of, and Phil talks about a psychological autopsy. This is now the mother of his child. This is the mother that he had a kid with. She relayed the text message to authorities, and this happened, I think, right before the shooting, believe it or not. He said, I'm going to go kill a lot of people. I'm going to try at least. And then he followed up saying, I'm going to kill myself afterwards. It was a half hour later when dispatchers were flooded with multiple reports from motorists on I-75. One 911 caller says, my foot got shot. Another could be heard helping a companion saying, take deep breaths, I love you. Another 911 call, I'm with a lady shot in the side, I'm putting pressure on. So sad. That is harrowing. 12 people, 12 vehicles were struck. 5 people had gunshots to the face, arms, and chest, none of which were life-threatening, thank goodness. 20 to 30 rounds, they say, were fired. Scott Duffy, though, these text messages again, what is it? Is it just reek of desperation? What does it tell you?
Yeah, so about a half hour before, is that what we're
Correct.
hearing?
Half hour before, yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure that it's already been done. What transpired within that half hour? So that's a call for help, and that's why no matter what the age is, for high percentage of these type of shooters, they put something out there, if not relatively right before the act, weeks, if not months leading up to. So they are ultimately, as we call them, they are cries for help. Stop me, help me, do whatever, because I can no longer, or choose to no longer, that combination thereof.
Yeah, Scott, by the way, let me interrupt you there because this is relevant to what you're saying. In the weeks leading up, as Scott just said, his neighbor spoke out. One neighbor said he went in his house, he grabbed an AR-15, which is allegedly what he bought that morning, maybe a different one. So that leads you to believe maybe he has 2 AR-15s because he reportedly bought this other gun that morning. But he went in his house, this is the neighbor's quote, grabbed an AR-15, pointed it at mine and my daughter's direction, and said next time he would shoot me and my daughter. So naturally, I went and filed charges on him. They dismissed it because they never notified me that there was a court date. He's threatened more than one person with a firearm in the neighborhood. This is, by the way, the most disturbing part of this whole story. Following that incident, he said that 3 family dogs were found dead on his property. 2 had been poisoned. So this is just giving you a more robust picture of his psychological frame of mind. I mean, what does this tell you? That this is happening weeks before he's reported, allegedly killing dogs. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's it's time and time again that we hear of these stories, and if they're ultimately being dealt with in a vacuum, that, hey, that in and of itself is not that serious, so it kind of gets looked over. Um, so it really comes down to how do we better assess taking these type of reports, whether to law enforcement or to family or to anybody else, and um, try to better. You can't predict the future because so many of these that happen end up being absolutely nothing. But the few, and they are relatively few, but they exist. How do you better assess what to do with this type of person who's committing these acts, escalating acts, in and of itself may not be charged, or if they can be charged, are not going to detain somebody, and then of course continue on that path. So it really is. I'll choose the word the multidiscipline, where it is law enforcement, but law enforcement is so restricted as to what they can do with individual acts, um, combined with some sort of community mental health, to where you can address, hey, is this somebody that if we don't do something, could it will we all be looking at this the day after a mass attack to say, I wish I could have, should have. So it really comes down to, um, I don't think we have that answer in place yet. I don't know what that answer is to address these type of situations, to where you can put an end to it. It's not news because nothing has happened. It's almost like going when the post 9/11 commission came. You have this mass attack, that there were many droplets of pieces of information that if were looked at, maybe you could have prevented or intercepted. And then, of course, we live in 23 years later, we don't know as a public how many incidents of terrorism have been stopped. We just don't know. Um, and they are not news because they
Mm,
never happened.
yeah.
So very
Well,
much
that's
like this is a very complex, and needs to be addressed as a complex situation, to where it's something that goes beyond law enforcement.
mm. By the way, for those just tuning in, it's going to be a little abbreviated show. We got about another 17 minutes before I have to let Scott go, and we go to get a haircut. Scott's taking his kids to a Weezer, wife and kid to a Weezer concert. But sadly, this is breaking my heart. I think it's going to be probably 2 weeks before Scott and Phil and I are back, because I'm headed to Tallahassee for the Donna Adelson trial. And then it might be the Jewish holidays the following weekend. So this could be perhaps the longest hiatus. I don't know. But if I can fit in a Phil and Scott show and they are able to accommodate, we'll do it. But it almost breaks my heart. I can't even talk about it because I could break down crying. This guy, we're just going to put a bow on this one. Ida says the lone wolf is the most difficult. This guy was an Army reservist from 2013 to 2019. He was a combat engineer before that, honorably discharged. He never deployed, as I said, but he did suffer from PST. He made those terroristic threats I just read back in March. There is a $35,000 reward for this guy. If you see this man, call your local police, call any authority, and let them know that you've seen him. And the public does help greatly in these sorts of cases. We're going to move on quickly now, so we also can get Phil and Scott to give us our final thoughts before we say goodbye for a little hiatus here. Phil Waters, remember the story about the Chiefs fans who were found a few days frozen and dead. Well, now there's news. The lawyer for the homeowner, a guy named Jordan Willis, the people who died were David Harrington, Clayton McGeeney, and Ricky Johnson. It was a whole weird thing where they were watching a game, and then people said it was the homeowner, this guy Jordan Willis. Well, Jordan Willis's attorney has been making the media rounds, and he said that they are expecting an arrest in this case for felony homicide. However, he said he does not believe it is his client, Jordan Willis, the homeowner. should we presume that this is going to be some sort of drug dealer who they have traced this back to? Is that what's going to happen?
I think so. I think that's where that's headed. You know, they tried doing that in Houston at one point, arresting drug dealers for people using what they sold them and killing them and so forth. I think I understand it, but I think that's a really high level of
Did you ever do that in your career where you
prosecute somebody for that? When you sell something to somebody and they're buying it for their own personal use, and this is the result. I don't know. That's going to be difficult to prosecute. I think because there's no intent. I mean, the drug dealers, and I'm not defending drug dealers. I used to be one in my other life, but
undercover narcotics. He was the real one. Yeah.
So, but I dealt with those people, and trust me, their motivation is money. It's not to provide their clients stuff that's going to kill them. They don't want to kill their clientele. So I just, in looking at this type of thing objectively and seeing that attempt was made in Houston there was a bad batch. I think it was heroin going around that was mixed up with some stuff that shouldn't have been in it, but it was killing people. And, trying to prosecute the drug dealer because of the result of the person who, in a willing way, took what they sold them and it killed them. I don't know. I just think that's a real high bar to get across to prosecute somebody for murder. So if they do it, good for them. But I just think that's pressure from the community, from the families, and so forth and so on. And the sad part about this is they went after the homeowner. It's heartbreaking. The whole thing is, but I'll be curious to see if they're successful in doing that, and maybe charging him with this sounds very sensational. And then at the end of it, what they end up doing is they end up pleading him out for delivery.
There you go. Pleading him out for delivery. By the way, Super Planner Girl, thank you so much. I saw your comment. Unnecessary. I appreciate it. Super Planner Girl helps us behind the scenes. So many people at STS Nation who reach out to help. That's why it's the sign over my shoulder says best guests on this side, better community on this side. That's my Edvard Munch, The Scream. It's a little statue, a wooden statue. And next to it is my Keith Morrison. You can't really see his face, but that is a Keith Morrison candle that I light when I need extra.
You're not sitting on Keith's face right now.
No, that's over here.
Okay.
That's my throw pillow.
I just thought you might on these.
Look how real that photo is.
On these SDS Fridays, I just thought you might have it. You might be sitting on his face just to show respect for Keith Morrison and these true crime podcasts.
Scott, I'm going to bring up this next comment for a reason from Linda Mon. I'm so glad she brought this up. Have you ever done pigeon pose, Scott Duff? You look like you would. It's where you kind of lay with your leg like a chicken wing and you lean forward. It stretches your glutes out. Feels fantastic. I'll send you a video of me doing it later. And you can practice at home. But the reason I bring it up today, you never know what's going to happen in the Waldman household. I can guarantee you this, though. Every time I ever went anywhere for Fox News, the second I was in the plane or gone, there was some sort of catastrophe back home with the COE. One time the door blew open. The SWAT team was at our house. COE called the police. She happened to be wearing very little clothing, and so the entire SWAT team entered, and then more guys came in. She was hanging out with them. Another time, my daughter fell off our bed at a very young age. I think I told this story. I was interviewing Jay Johnson, the former Homeland Security Secretary, and he told me, you better get to the hospital. So every time I go away, there seems to be something. Well, today, luckily, I was home. But the reason I bring up Pigeon Pose is it was the COE's day to take the kids to school. I was going to sleep in and rest, where I hear a scream from the closet, and I see the COE doubled over. I guess she's getting old, because in going to a drawer, she somehow pulled out the entire left side of her body. She claims she has no feeling in her left arm, leading up to her top of her head. She's walking around like a zombie. She's not that old. I told her to stop training for Iron Men competition or Iron Women competition, but it was simply by going to a sock drawer and reaching in. Scott Duffy, have you ever collapsed from something like that, Scott? By the way, I'm sure she's very happy that I'm sharing this, but go ahead. Scott, have you ever collapsed, or Phil, from going to your sock drawer and pulling out multiple muscles?
Not yet. But I think the COE should contact the Philadelphia shoulder doc. See if there's something.
Amazing advice. Absolutely amazing advice. I haven't thought of it. Phil, I'm giving these stories some titles. We have to run through them. This one I call Worst Son in the World. A Florida teen was arrested in connection to the fatal stabbing of his mother. And this comes, Phil, more than a year after he was accused of killing his father in Oklahoma, Phil. Catherine Griffin, the mother, 39, was allegedly killed following a stabbing in Auburndale, Florida. It happened on my sister's birthday, September 8th. He tried to say that she attacked him and fell on the knife, but I guess the autopsy showed that there's no way those wounds could have occurred. The father died, and he claimed self-defense in that killing and was somehow able to avoid prosecution. I call him Worst Son in the World. By the way, I'm watching Worst Ex Ever on Netflix. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, Phil Waters, does it surprise you that within a year's time, a young man, late teens, would kill his mother and then father? I think the answer is going to be no.
No, I mean, did we not get a clue from the first one? And I don't know if you're going to bring it up very quickly, because I know we're getting ready to bug off of here, but the evildoer got to change of venue.
Yeah, going to Boise. I'm going to go to that trial. And
as a result, he's also got a new judge. So
yeah, a lot
but
of
I think when we talked about all of this back when we were talking about it, I know that I think Scott, my observation was that's what was going to happen, and that's what needed to happen, a change of venue to get it out of that Moscow area.
By the way, this is a great idea. You should reveal the Phil pillow. We know you have a pillow. That is genius, Vanilla Rose. I've got to get a pillow. I'm going to get a pillow. This is North Star on a serious note, who said she was incarcerated for 17 years. For the record, STS community, no person or animal was physically injured, thankfully. But I take accountability for all the emotional and psychological injuries my actions caused. Why does STS showing? We're streaming on both channels. I'm not sure why. Just do whatever the COE tells me. Cauliflower says to the COE, been there, done that, about basically throwing out her entire body by reaching into Cauliflower is expanding here. I throw up my back, reaching into the fridge for a bottle of water. Scott Duffy, a very quick comment on this, and then we'll end with a couple of less disturbing stories. This is a high school teacher in California. His name is Su Kong Sit, 38 years old. Su Kong Sit, like sit on a chair. Just sentenced to, I believe, 17 years in prison, supervised lifetime supervised release once he is released from prison. he was filming young children in his school, and then it got to the point where they found things on his computer, very young kids involved in very hideous acts. What's wrong with the world, Scott? This is a school teacher that's supposed to be teaching kids, not filming kids. Are we just ruined as a society? That's a broad, simple question. Your take. Is our society destroyed?
Is that a simple yes or no?
Yeah, basically.
California. Let's
Hmm.
California is.
Let's just leave it there. Let's move it along. That's very disturbing. This is an important one, Scott Duffy, because this is we've talked about this before, but now an Indiana Uber driver, he's accused of, I don't want to use the word because it's a triggering word, but doing something very untoward to a woman against her will, and then murdering her. His name is Francisco Valadez. He was arrested on suspicion. Scott Duffy, on a serious note, what do you advise the majority of whom are women who watch this show? What do you advise before they get in an Uber? Should you take an Uber alone? People are probably getting in an Uber today. How do you know you're safe in there?
Yeah, and I know that it's at least in my local community, say my name as one of those added features. It's kind of everything coming to full circle: situational awareness, making other people aware of your travel in twos if you can with a buddy. I would say with regards to an Uber, it's as there was a similar tragedy with a drunken female who got into a car thinking it was her Uber driver. And of course, it was just somebody stalking and just lucked out, took advantage, exploited the situation. So in regards to the specifics, if you order something such as an Uber or hired driver, just ask the questions. And before getting into a car, especially in a public place. It's one thing a car coming to your residence or specific place, but in a public place to where so many cars are similar and you jump into the wrong car, and it's just time and time again how many people who are out there want to do harm and know exactly where to go to look for those vulnerabilities, drunken individuals, people who are confused, young, etc., in very public places. And then it just so happens to be somebody gets in the back of their car and it's like, wow, this is my day. Just to know, bad people, very bad people exist, and they are around us and can be defeated with some simple situational awareness practices.
And I'll add to that bad people, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, because you're the expert, bad people don't always look like bad people. In other words,
Absolutely
it could
right.
be a very clean-cut looking Uber driver. Is that right, Scott? Who looks like he's polished, tells you that he has a PhD. Yes. Yeah. Who are you picking up? Always ask. That's a good piece of advice. Space Coast. Phil, this is totally off the beaten path. And another story, and then we're going to say goodbye. The world is scary, Space Coast says on the West Coast. I'm never leaving my condo again. The problem, Space Coast, is you've been hit with about 8 million earthquakes. 4.7 hit Malibu just the other day. My question to Phil, is the big one coming to California? Do you expect that we're going to wake up one day in the very, very near future and they're going to say like 8.7? And then I'm going to have to crawl to California and look for my family, who will all be safe. But is the big one coming, Phil?
Oh, I have no idea. Oh, and by the way, did you see the story of the former Miss Switzerland finalist?
No.
Who was murdered by her husband, who then dismembered her
and pureed her
and put her and pureed her, put her in a blender.
Yeah. Did that surprise you, Phil? Did that surprise you?
It surprised me in Switzerland. I have a very good friend of mine I have a very good friend of mine who.
If it happened in Nebraska, he wouldn't bat an eye.
Well, he's a homicide cop. We're about the same age and experience and so forth. We retired about the same time, but we've know his family and so forth. So we've been over there several times. Anyway, he's a homicide cop in Switzerland with the Zurich State Police, and Switzerland is a great place. In fact, we thought about buying a cabin there at one point, but it's really a neat place. And every able-bodied male in the country is armed. They're part of the militia. They don't really have and they are set up as a true democracy. So, but it was interesting to see this. I mean, these are two, for lack of a better term, I mean, they look very normal. He's a nice looking guy. She's a beautiful woman, and they've got 2 kids, and something goes off the rails, and I think he stabbed her. Then he strangled her, then dismembered her, and put her in a blender. It's bizarre. So I sent my friend the article and said, what the heck? And I know he's read it, but I haven't gotten a response from him yet. So he may be as astonished by it as I am. But
there's one question. How do you fit an adult woman into a blender? How does this happen?
Well, it was a hand blender is what it's described as. And he dismembered her with a jigsaw. So,
whoa!
I guess he didn't get it all done, but yeah.
I've got to get better blenders. I make protein shakes and it has trouble breaking up the ice. This sounds like it was a very powerful. Look at Ned Smith. She agrees with me. That's some blender. She says that's beyond sick. I can't even wrap my head around it. So on to the very last 2 stories here. There's a marshmallow death, Scott Duffy. This is a sad story. This is a mother of 2. You've heard of Kobayashi and Joey Chestnut, the hot dog eaters?
Yes.
You heard of them? Yeah, the Coney Island hot dog eater. There was just a live Netflix show. Shows you how healthy our country is.
Well, didn't Joey Chestnut get booted by Nathan because he's eating veggie hot dogs or something?
Yeah. So by the way, but he just got hired by Netflix.
Which is a sacrilege. Veggie hot dogs. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He just ate on Netflix live. I think he ate 83 hot dogs in 10 minutes. But this woman, Scott Duffy, 37 years old. She is a mother, sadly, on 9/11 of all days in Wales, of all places. She put too many marshmallows into her mouth. She collapsed and died at the Bordeaux Rugby Football Club. They're now looking into the antics and how to go about doing this so no one else dies. Have you ever heard of a marshmallow death, Scott Duffy? Does this surprise you? Okay,
it
first.
I'm not
okay,
sure.
well let me tell you what to be. Let me tell you what to be ready for. The lawsuit from the family against the marshmallow manufacturer. Get ready.
Even in Wales, you think they'll do that in Wales?
Get ready for that one. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Look at this. Abdusalam Farah. I'm 54 years old, and it seems every year humans are going lower than before. Abdusalam, I would have to agree with you wholeheartedly. Scott Duffy, I lied. We're just going to fly through this. There's an elephant at the Bronx Zoo, by the way, that my dad grew up right next to the Bronx Zoo. My dad always begged him to take me. One year he did take me. It was November, and the only animals I saw were pigeons, because in the winter they send the animals down to Florida. I saw pigeons and squirrels. It's one of my fond memories with my father. So there's the elephant. Happy the elephant lives there. They say he's anything but happy. Animal rights activists say that, and by the way, he was born, I think, in like the 70s. So he's been around a long time. He lives with Patty. Suddenly, Happy has gone missing, and the zoo says he's fine. He just doesn't like to leave his enclosure. And animal rights activists say they're just trying to hide the fact that he is clinically depressed that he just doesn't want to move. He hates his enclosure. Should they free Happy the elephant, Scott Duffy?
Well, but and in custody since the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
kill
mean,
him.
Yeah, it's gonna be
yeah,
it's gonna be like
Yep.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
What would Happy do
Yeah.
if he left the enclosure?
Yeah. I mean, it's this is relatively recent, right? But Happy the elephant enjoyed life for decades. I mean,
Mhm.
it's yeah. I would say releasing him into the wild is not a good thing for him.
Devastating. Finally, a last story is super interesting. Can't get into the science of it all. I'm sure Phil read this. They're saying these are seismologists, the same people that would read an earthquake in California, but different. They say that last September, if no one heard this, this is a wild story, that in Greenland, there was a tsunami that was 650 feet, a 650-foot wave, and the tsunami lasted for 9 days. The most interesting part about this is there's not a single person on planet Earth that we know of who witnessed the tsunami. No one saw it, but this is a remote part of Greenland, I guess. But it's called Ella Island. And it was triggered, they say, by basically a glacier landslide. So, Phil, if you could imagine a pot of water and you drop a big ice cube and it creates a ripple effect, this was a glacier dropping into a body of water, 650-foot tsunami. If shooters on I-75 are not coming to get us, they are blaming this on climate change. Is it the fact that Phil Watt? Are we just finished, Phil? Should we just go out today and just enjoy life, spend all our money, do whatever we want because it's just game over? I'll let you have the final thought. Then final thoughts, and we got to say goodbye because I got to get to my haircut. And he's
Well,
gotta get
I
to
would
his-
just say, look, folks, I'm hoping praying that everybody has a great weekend. And it's always interesting to me. Anyway, because people will go nuts if I say what I'm thinking. But yeah,
it in your
so
head,
I guess we're going to be separated here for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's so sad. Very sad. I'm very saddened.
well, that's good. I'm glad we got this last one in. And Scott, and enjoy your Weezer concert there.
I'm the driver.
Oh, you're just taking him to the Weezer.
Yeah, so
I'm
you were
gonna-
not. Are you a
yeah.
Weezer fan? Were you not invited? I
You
want to
know,
know.
I'll put it this way, and I know one of the early comments was from a Weezer fan. What's my favorite song? I don't have one. I've heard them. My wife went to the same high school, same years as the lead singer, so there is a Connecticut connection. But otherwise, no, I'm not. My youngest is a fan. My wife's a fan. So I'm dropping them off, picking them up. I'll be swirling the city for a couple hours. That's my.
What do you? I could ask follow-ups there. So, like being an FBI agent in that area, well, Phillies, you must know
Yeah.
people, Scott. Like you just go hang out at another agent's house. Like you cruise around. You got places to.
No, I don't.
go?
I have no plans. So I'm unless somebody's listening and says, yeah, stop by.
Well, maybe
I
Philadelphia
plan-
shoulder surgeons. God, does Phillies in town tonight?
Phillies are in town. So it's one of the reasons why I'm just going to drop them off, and then pick them up.
Look at this. Elephants need companionship. Phil probably knows here in Oklahoma, we have a place for elephants in Hugo and an elephant graveyard too. That's, by the way, Carm's favorite animal in the world is an elephant. I'm a wheezer when the cedar is blooming. She wheezes from allergies. We said it all. Phil said his goodbye. Scott said his goodbye. We'll be back in, I can't believe I'm saying this, 3 weeks. Love you, America. Love you, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oh, I got a list of the countries that were in the chat today. Here they go. Estonia, Sweden, the UK, the Netherlands, Vietnam, South Africa, the Isle of Newfoundland, Cabo Verde Islands, the Isle de Staten, that's Staten Island, Cape Town, South Africa, and New Zealand. Phil, what do you think of the fact that we are a global show?
Oh, I think it's awesome. I appreciate all those folks that tune in and take part. And because look, it's important. I mean, us, the three of us just sitting here talking amongst ourselves is pretty boring. And so to have folks take part, that's really the whole point of this, right? Is to bring people in and they ask questions and they make their comments and they contribute to this thing. And so, yeah, that's what makes this thing work. And I'm just appreciative of all of them and being able to get with them every Friday and kind of have a sit down and have a chat.
Well, listen to this. Starting to the COE is hosting a show on Corey Richins with Gigi McKelvey of Pretty Lies and Alibis. And I'm just forgetting who the other person is. Forgive me. But the COE will tell you. Who is it? I'm just blanking. I'm on an information overload. I apologize greatly. And Tuesday, Monday, Steve Cohen and I are driving up to Tallahassee. Tuesday coverage begins with jury selection in the Donna Adelson trial. I'll be doing the mornings, lunch lives, afternoon court session, and then evening shows every day. See you then. Love you, America. Have a great weekend. And aloha, mahalo, all those other things that you Hawaiians say.